That's not too bad.
Nice.
It's not quite. It's not quite there. I think I could have used just a wee bit more Kahlua, but
yeah, it kind of settled out a little bit on you. It looks like too.
Yeah, I also didn't stir it very well, so I'm sure the bottom of this is going to be really fucking sweet. On that note, welcome back, folks.
Yeah, welcome back to the Purpose-Driven Dude, the podcast centered around the slowest growing religion in the world, Dudism.
Dudism, based on the film The Big Lebowski, which I realized we didn't say for like the first 2 episodes.
Look, if people are getting into a podcast called The Purpose-Driven Dude, they know what they're getting.
Yeah, I'm hoping that maybe they know what they're getting themselves into, but I was like, holy shit, we didn't even say what Dudism was whenever we started that episode.
I mean, look, if you're still here with us in episode 5 and you didn't quite understand what was going on for the first couple episodes there, I mean, good on you.
I was about to say, we appreciate you going down that path with us. I am sure the journey's been a little bit bumpy, but hopefully you got a few good chuckles out of the whole situation.
I mean, that's the most we can hope for at this point, I think. So, but yeah, so welcome back. We are coming at you.
Thank God we're not a self-help program.
Oh, yeah. No, this is true.
The worst camp counselors ever.
It's like
you'll be all right, dude.
Just like go off into the woods or something. I don't know. Just don't get eaten. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Go get another pudding cup from the calf. You'll be okay.
Yeah, it'll be okay. But anyway, yeah, so we are back this week with an episode for you guys. Centered around what we had termed as Dudic Mixology. I think you had a better term for it, actually.
Yeah, well, I mean, the title for the episode that I came up with was Caucasians, oat sodas, and good sarsaparilla, which is just referencing various lines throughout The Big Lebowski in, whenever the characters are referring to the drinks that they're consuming in that particular scene. Obviously, the dude, big fan of the White Russian, which we're going to be talking about. Also, a couple of points. Ordering beer, which he at one point refers to as a couple of oat sodas,
which I love.
And which has
been
a regular part of my jargon for a while now. Yeah. And then, of course, we're talking about the stranger and his affinity for sarsaparilla soda.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's our topic for the week. Before we get into that, though, we'll go ahead and open up with our particularly doodly segment, which I think you have something for us.
Yes, I do, and I'm very excited. In case anybody is wondering at this point, we're both fairly liberal people.
Safe to say.
We've espoused some pretty progressive politics on the show already.
I'd say so.
So I'm actually turning to a source of a fair amount of information that I take in on a weekly basis. Mm-hmm. And so for Notably Doodly this week, I am actually bringing to the table Mr. John Oliver.
Ah, wonderful. I was hoping. Because, look, if I had done particularly doodly for this episode, we would have been talking about John Oliver. So
yeah. And now I'm actually going to be talking about a thing that happened a couple of weeks ago now. Mm-hmm. But John Oliver has been a very important voice of reason for quite some time in the U.S. obviously he was originally an English comedian, but became very popular in the U.S. Due to his involvement in The Daily Show on Comedy Central, where he was a commentator. Now the host of HBO's Last Week Tonight every Sunday, which is just a 30-minute weekly news and comedy program.
Which is notable too, because it's a similar style to The Daily Show, but they take the time to actually like deep dive into
awesome. A lot of current topics and events. And he has actually had a lot of influence in politics and social issues for the last several years because of his work on Last Week Tonight. And I specifically wanted to reference 2 weeks ago, John Oliver, through Last Week Tonight, released a book.
Yes,
he
did.
And so the book is entitled A Day in the Life of Marlon Bundo. Which is the name of Vice President Mike Pence's pet rabbit.
Which, as he notes on the show, is a excellent name.
Yeah, no, Marlon Bundo is absolutely a fantastic name for a rabbit. Like, there's no denying that. Yeah. That is excellent, and I'm not going to blame the rabbit for the shitty owner.
Yeah, and like, I mean, that's the thing. It's a classic example, I think, of the whole like broken clock being right twice a day. Like he fucking like slam dunked that name. Like, well done, Mike Pence. Credit where credit is due on that one.
Yeah, cheers, Mike. You named your rabbit very well. Mm-hmm. So this was actually in response to a book that Mike Pence had published called A Day in the Life of the Vice President, which was it's a children's book written by Marlon Bundo, following Grandpa Pence through a day in the life of the vice president, which just sounds like cringeworthy on so many levels. Mike Pence is known for having a pretty dodgy record, to put it mildly. On a number of subjects, most notably LGBTQ plus rights. He has a history of being involved with Focus on the Family, which is an organization that has long espoused gay conversion therapy.
See also torture.
Torture. Literally, people have died. And then also, Pence is known at the time. I believe he was governor of Indiana.
Yes,
I think. I really should have written that down.
I think that's right. That's
I fail to memorize facts about people I don't care about. So
that's totally fair.
It's like, forgive me if I've gotten a little bit about Mike Pence's past career wrong, because quite frankly, he's a trash fire of a human being, and I just don't care if I get the facts of his career right.
So first governor of the moon.
Yeah, so he was the first governor of Antarctica, as it turns out, and he invaded the moon and took it by force with the cunning use of flags.
Right. That's how you take the moon.
Yeah, because that's how you take over the moon. That's how the United States originally took it, and then he took it from the United States by declaring it now a colony of Pensopia.
Legal proceedings are still ongoing.
Yeah, no, we'll figure it out eventually. So anyway, he published a book.
Yes.
So John Oliver actually, in response to this, published A Day in the Life of Marlon Bundo, which is also a children's book, which chronicles a day in the life of Marlon Bundo, in which he meets and falls in love with the most beautiful boy rabbit that he has ever seen in his life. Because in this book, Marlon Bundo is gay, and everyone supports him for it. Yeah. With a notable exception of the stink bug in the garden, who is very obviously drawn with Mike Pence's haircut, which is fantastic.
But it's like an actual children's book.
It's an actual children's book. And, okay, so here's the deal. It is available on, you can go to betterbundobook.com or focus on the Firmally, which is the domain that they also will have direct you to Better Bundo Book. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble.
There's like an audiobook version with a bunch of actors.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Is so you can get a hard copy version of it through several different retailers. As of this recording date, which is April 2nd, it's sold out, and it's been sold out for like 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, it's top of the Amazon charts.
Yeah, it's like crazy great sales on this book. You can also get a Kindle version, and you can also get an audio version through Audible, which is currently $1.95 on Audible. So everybody should go and buy it, because the Audible version has a full cast, including Jim Parsons, Jesse Tyler Ferguson, John Lithgow, Ellie Kemper, Jeff Garland, Jack McBrayer, and RuPaul.
It's just perfect.
And
so
I mean, it's like every single one of these are people that I adore. And so this proceeds of the sales of this book are going to benefit the Trevor Project, which is a 24-hour national crisis hotline and suicide prevention hotline for LGBTQ plus youth in the United States. Also going to proceeds going to AIDS United, which is an organization that helps fund studies to help end the AIDS epidemic in the U.S. And both just absolutely incredible organizations who are doing great work. And yeah, I just like, if you make a donation of $11 or more to either one of those organizations, you also will receive a free digital copy of the book from both the Trevor Project and AIDS United. So yeah, just with so it's kind of funny. We obviously are also, we've mentioned it before, are linked tangentially through to Your Fave is Problematic, another podcast that you guys should check out. And it's kind of funny because I was doing my research and was talking to Liz from Your Fave, and she actually mentioned, and I unfortunately had missed this episode, but mentioned that John Oliver was the recipient of their first non-problematic award.
That's right. I listened to that episode. Yeah,
on their podcast.
Perfect.
So I actually was going to propose, in honor of John Oliver's greatness, that we actually canonize John Oliver as a saint in the Order of the Brothers Seamus.
I like this, yeah.
In Dudism.
Of which we have zero authority over, but look, it's all in your own headcanon at a certain point. So,
hey,
yeah.
Oliver Benjamin, I think you'll like this one.
I think you'd be fine with it. If you're listening, by the way, and you'd like to come on the show.
If you're listening and you'd like to be on the show, we'd be happy to have you.
Same with John Oliver or anybody that we mentioned in the cast recording of that podcast.
If, for whatever fucking reason, John Oliver happens to be listening to either Your Fave is Problematic or The Purpose-Driven Dude, congratulations, sir. You've just won 2 awards.
Yeah. Listen, John, if you want to come sit in my living room and record a podcast
behind some very uncomfortable blankets,
some big blankets, you are more than welcome anytime, sir.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But please keep up the good work. But cheers to you, John.
Indeed.
You have done some great things in this world, and I know that you will continue to do so. So thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you.
No, much appreciated. Firmly agree. And
oh yeah, by the way, I also listened to the audiobook this evening, and it's great.
I kind of want to get a physical copy of that one.
I do too, just to have. And I mean, as John Oliver put it, I mean, with the proceeds going to the Trevor Project and AIDS United, it's the perfect way to do a really good thing in the most dickish way possible.
Yeah. It's
which kind of just fits into our method, here on the Purpose-Driven Dude pretty well.
I mean, look, it definitely is a pretty major theme in The Big Lebowski. It's a pretty major theme in the Tao Te Ching. Like, if you're sticking it to the man in some way or another, you're doing it right, man.
Yeah, no. So absolutely,
Like,
absolutely.
Just looking at power and laughing at it, man. And see, that's the nice thing. John Oliver has found an excellent way of not only like laughing at power, but also speaking truth to it. Like he manages to do both very effectively. So you got to give the guy a lot of credit for sure.
John Oliver, maybe the new Lao Tzu.
Yeah, maybe he's a dude for our day, for
He
our
is,
age.
yeah, he is a dude for our time and place.
He really is. He fits right in there. But so that brings us, I guess, then around to our main segment of
Our
the
main
day.
topic.
So Dudic Mixology. So for anybody that has seen the film, you'll probably remember that it's a film centered around a number of beverages.
Which, by the way, if you haven't seen the film,
yeah, look, what are you doing at this
why are you listening to the 5th episode of this podcast? Pause, go listen or go watch the movie, and then come back and continue because we're about to get into kind of the woods of the film.
Yeah, which
At
I mean,
this
look, we've
point-
already done.
Which we've already done.
Like-
At this point, yeah, just pause, go watch the movie, come on back. We'll be here. We'll wait.
And look, if you love us enough to be listening and have not seen the film, then, I mean, fucking A, man. That's awesome. But...
I mean, thanks.
I mean, that's cool, and I didn't know we had such sterling personalities. I don't think that's right, but
Yeah, no, I somehow doubt that people find me that charming.
yeah, same. So, like, but no, okay, yeah, go see the film, and after you've seen the film, come back, and you'll have noticed after viewing that it's a film that features a number of beverages. As a lot of movies do, but they seem to put a pretty high emphasis on.
Yeah,
this.
I mean, they're definitely a focal point throughout the film. Like, there's very few scenes in the movie where people aren't drinking something.
True. Mostly alcoholic beverages, although that's not entirely the case.
Not entirely the case, and we'll get into that here in a few minutes.
Yeah, and so, we mentioned it earlier. The three big beverages that really come up throughout the film are beer, referred to as oat soda in the film, again, hilariously. White Russians, the cocktail White Russian, and also the drink sarsaparilla. And we figured those would be kind of fun to focus a little bit of research on, a little bit of study on, just to kind of take a dig.
I figure, we can kind of like dive into the big one first.
Sure, we might as well start at the one everyone thinks of.
Yeah, when you think of the Big Lebowski, you automatically think of the White Russian.
Yes.
White Russians, as we refer to them, the sacramental beverage, the drink of the dude. A White Russian is a popular cocktail in the United States these days. Traces its inception back to the mid-1960s.
Which is way more recent than I would have expected.
Yeah, I honestly, I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit further back than that too. But prepared traditionally, it is a mixture of vodka, coffee liqueur, and cream. Some people use milk or
powdered creamer. If
I was about to
at a certain
say
point,
non-dairy powdered creamer if you're,
if
which
you're
is
Dire Straits,
which is used in one scene, which is probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Just because the look on Jeff Bridges' face whenever he is making that cocktail is priceless.
The look on his face and the complete indifference of everyone around him, just like combined, is just the best.
It's pretty amazing. It's an adaptation of the Black Russian, which is a cocktail that was actually attributed to Gustav Tops. I'm sure the clinking of the ice in my glass every single time I move is going to become just intolerable by the time I'm done talking here.
But for now, it sounds classy as fuck.
Yeah. I am currently drinking a White Russian.
Yeah,
by
I got a beer, but he's
I got an oat soda in reserve over here. So wait for me to pop the cap on that thing.
Just as a reminder, this is an adult podcast. We drink and swear on this one all the time, and drink responsibly, folks.
Yeah, please drink responsibly. I encourage you to have a beverage if you're listening to this episode, but only if you're not driving.
Yeah, look, I listen to podcasts in the car constantly. Do not drink and drive, because if you do, you're a fucking human parquat, and you should, maybe not do that.
Yeah, no,
fucking
you should.
dickbag.
Yeah, that's an absolutely shitty thing to do. Actually the Black Russian was a cocktail that was originally attributed to Mr. Gustav Tops, which is a great name,
Yeah, that's
by the
really
way.
Well done, sir.
Yeah, a Belgian barman in Brussels, which, oh man, that's a great sentence too.
Yeah.
Belgian barman in Brussels. I love
It's
it.
got some good alliteration.
Yeah, and was actually, he created the Black Russian in honor of Pearl Mesta, who was actually at the time the United States ambassador to Luxembourg. In 1949.
So for once, Luxembourg mattered.
Yeah, I know. It's like, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Luxembourg.
Yeah,
I guess.
no, hey, appreciate it.
Sure.
So the name refers to the use of vodka in the drink, which is traditionally seen as a Russian spirit. Doesn't refer to any sort of like Russian origin to the cocktail. And the first use of the name White Russian is actually attributed to the Oakland Tribune. On November 21st, 1965, it appeared as an insert in the newspaper which described the recipe for the White Russian, which was listed as 1 ounce each of Southern vodka and cream. Southern, in this case, actually referred to a very short-lived coffee liqueur that was made by Southern Comfort.
Holy shit.
Yeah, now...
that just sounds disgusting.
Yeah, no, it sounds so horrible. It's like, I don't want to...
It's like snake juice.
Yeah, no, I'm like, I do not like Southern Comfort personally. And yeah, no, that just sounds just horrible.
I left Southern Comfort, like, firmly where it belonged, which was, like, college. Like... If given the opportunity to drink anything, I drank it, basically, and SoCo stays there.
Yeah, no, exactly. Although, when I was actually taking my sommelier exam, in the practical exam, the master sommelier who was asking me all the questions asked me what the flavoring ingredient in Southern Comfort was, and I got it wrong, because I answered and I saw him mark the X on the paper, and I was like, well, fuck.
Wait, what is it? I don't even remember.
I think it's peaches.
Peaches?
Actually.
Ugh. Well,
yeah,
it can stay in college.
Whiskey and peaches, I think.
Just drink whiskey. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, fucking...
Also, there's actually good peach-flavored whiskey. It's called Bird Dog. It's actually pretty tasty. Go check it out.
Sure.
And it's not my preferred drink of choice, but between the two, it is the superior peach-flavored whiskey.
You learn something new on Purpose Driven Dude.
Yeah, no, exactly. I there are a lot of drinks in my life. I will always have something to recommend. So the funny thing that I thought about this was actually in my research, it seems that before The Big Lebowski came out, the White Russian was not actually a very popular cocktail. A lot of people considered it bland. They considered it kind of lazy.
Which is weird because, like, of all the cocktails that you could make, I find it actually takes a considerable amount of effort to maintain, like, the ingredients for it. Like, you have to keep milk on hand, which I personally
You have to have fresh dairy.
Yeah, and, like, I don't drink a lot of milk personally, so keeping, like, any form of milk around is a bit of an ask, honestly.
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from there. But after The Big Lebowski came out, and it acquired this like massive cult following. In our case, a literal cult following. Boy, should we say that about our? Maybe we should avoid referring to
Mr. Benjamin. Might not want to come on our podcast.
Yeah, he might not want to come on the podcast anymore. We'll see. We're not a cult. We don't brainwash anybody.
We just drink a lot and swear.
We just drink we drink and swear and bowl and host podcasts, I guess.
You try to take her easy, I guess.
Yeah, take her easy. Take her easy.
We're not going to...
You...
Come on. I mean, look. Just... No. You can get out of my fucking cab.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, no. Okay, so terrible music aside.
But anyway...
that's actually the one song of theirs I don't mind.
That's fine, I guess.
But anyway... So yeah, like after The Big Lebowski came out, surge in popularity in The White Russian, and actually the like use of the White Russian in the film is the subject of a lot of like artistic and literary like analysis
Really?
now amongst people who academically study The Big Lebowski.
Interesting.
Which it was kind of funny, like pointing to people pointing to like the really casual preparation method that's used throughout the entire film. Like at one point in time, the dude literally sticks his finger down in the glass to stir. And so it's one of those things where it's like it's kind of indicative of the dude's personality.
And I can see that from like a film criticism point of view, right? Because I mean, like the opening scene of the movie involves buying the half and half to make the White Russian. Like there's a lot focused around the preparation and consumption of the drink.
It's a weirdly prevalent like device throughout the film. I'm not going to say like plot device because. I mean, I guess it kind of is a plot device, because if he hadn't been out buying the half and half, then the Treehorn thugs maybe wouldn't have caught him unawares.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because like it's almost like that false mulligan, right? Like it's the thing that gets him off the couch. Like it's the action thing, but it's sort of like the false flag at the beginning of the film. You're like, oh shit! Like, and I hate using the word false flag. I regret this greatly already. But like, he already has a purpose, and he comes home, and you think he's done, and he thinks he's done.
Yeah, he thinks he's coming home to have a cocktail and then burn a J in the tub and
listen to some fucking whale sounds and like bish bosh boosh.
But yeah, launches the whole plot of the film,
which is kind of wild in its own way. Like
yeah, I know when you really kind of put it in that context. The White Russian, the or specifically half and half, the ingredient that launches the plot of this movie.
It's the weirdest thing, and I think that's the interesting thing too, is that it's a film that it begins to subvert your expectations from that very moment. Like you are constantly being thrown in different directions.
And it's a movie that literally exists to subvert the viewer's expectations in almost every single scene.
So I can see where people would focus their criticism or their like literary or film like kind of analysis on that point. I mean, it makes sense. Like it is a fairly like central thing to the movie.
Oh, absolutely.
And unassuming too, like because it's in so many different scenes, but you kind of don't even think about it at a certain point. Like there's making another drink. Like.
Yeah, I was about to say at one point in time he's having an entire conversation. He's being driven home in the back of a limo, and he just has a White Russian in the back of this limo.
Well, he's talking about a fucking rash. Yeah. It's just like the most random thing.
Yeah. And he's like listening to the driver tell a joke. And that's the one that leads to the oft quoted line about, "Hey, watch it, man, there's a beverage here."
Yeah. As he's being dragged through a street with a fucking lowball glass. They're just like, what the shit? It's the best.
Yeah. So just some great scenes. Ordering it at the bar in the bowling alley, in which he refers to it as a Caucasian, which when you get down to it, Caucasian is literally White Russian.
Yeah, it's a again surprisingly clever moment.
So this has been fastened so tightly to the fandom for The Big Lebowski, and then by extension Dudism, since we're literally a religion based on this movie.
Yeah, that's why we kind of only half jokingly refer to it as the sacramental beverage. It is that. And there, if you want to dig into the spiritualism of it or whatever, if that's the direction you go with it, it takes a certain almost meditative sort of action to create this thing.
Proportions are very important.
Yeah, because you can fuck it up super easily.
Yeah,
it can be all Kahlua, and then all of a sudden you're just drinking coffee liqueur.
It's kind of gross.
Yeah, it's easy to fuck up. So you have to focus, you have to pay attention to what you're doing.
So let's segue then into preparation methods.
Yes.
Because the two of us go about this a little bit differently.
We definitely do. And we were thinking, one of your podcasts recently did a video series on how to create cocktails. seemed like a bit of a hassle.
It was.
So what we were thinking of doing with this one, once we get our social media up, we will go ahead and just take photos, basically, of our process.
Yeah, and there's gonna be a Facebook group.
That's probably gonna be the best place for it.
Yeah, and so we'll publish it on the Facebook group. I think we can link it to a Twitter account.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not sure about that. I'm a Luddite. I have no idea how these things work. I've never used Twitter before in my life, except once. I used it once last Thanksgiving for Get Off My Lawn to like send a happy Thanksgiving message, and then I never used it again.
I dislike Twitter, but we will have a Twitter.
We will have a Twitter. I can't guarantee how often we'll check it and respond, but we'll work on it.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But we will have social media.
They'll be in the show notes.
Yeah, they'll be in the show notes, and once we kind of get everything set up for editing, I will... my neighbors are clopping around.
Yeah, I was about to say, they got some like serious clogging practice going on up there right now.
I swear, it's like every fucking day. But when I do kind of like our housekeeping segments for these episodes, I'll be sure to point everyone in the direction of those. But yeah, we do have different methods for preparation. I think both of us start the same, essentially. Like, we both start with the lowball glass, essentially, right?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Sorry, I had to mix in the last of the Kahlua that sank down to the bottom of my...
Yeah, I kind of separated a bit on you there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we start with the lowball. Honestly, like, and this is the thing, I love White Russians. I enjoy drinking them.
They're delicious.
They're delicious. They're also like drinking a fucking milkshake. Like, basically, you're drinking a bunch of cream. I can drink like one in a night. Like, they're just too heavy. Like, for my...
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I've got a sweet tooth. I love dessert and baked goods and sweet drinks. But yeah, no, they definitely will get you a little like...
Yeah, you kind of almost want to have like some water with it.
Which I realize doing that like by a microphone means nothing to the person who's listening to it, but I'm doing that kind of thing like when a dog tastes something bad where they like nah.
Considering this microphone, it probably picked up. But...
Yeah, I'm sure that it picked up, but I'm sure people are like, what the fuck is that
probably
noise?
Sounds like moist slopping. But yeah, so this is the thing. What? Moist. and see, here's the thing.
I'm sorry, that's just a funny word.
It's a wonderful word. But here's the thing. And I think actually this is kind of the root of our difference in preparation, because I actually really don't have much of a sweet tooth. So I think this kind of points us in the direction of how our prep goes. Because what I'll do is I'll get a lowball glass. I usually like pretty decent sized ice cubes. Standard fridge ice cubes are usually fine. And I'll usually put like maybe 5 to 6 like fridge ice cubes in the glass. And,
yeah, I wouldn't recommend using crushed ice.
No.
Or anything like that. That would melt too quickly and you just get like a really, really bland, watered down cocktail.
Yeah, and you'd be mixing constantly.
Yeah, no. Crushed ice has exactly one cocktail it goes with, and that's the mint julep, and that's it.
I would accept it in a margarita, personally.
Well, yeah,
like a
okay.
Good slushy margarita.
Now, if you're doing like a frozen margarita sort of situation, then yeah, I get that. I tend to strain my margaritas, but
which is also delicious. But if it's like a hot day, man, you want that slush.
Oh yeah, and it's getting a little bit warm for my taste here in LA. A couple of these days this last week.
It's coming. It's coming.
That does sound good.
I bemoan this fact. But anyway, so I start with like maybe 5 to 6 ice cubes, depending on their size. And my prep method is pretty straightforward. My next thing is vodka. I will fill vodka to the glass to the point where it covers the ice. It's usually between 1 and 2 shots worth of vodka, somewhere in that area. I usually
ounce and a half, 2 ounces.
Ounce and a half, 2 ounces. I tend to make a pretty stiff cocktail when I make cocktails, just generally. So this is sort of my usual basic like prep rule for.
Well, weak cocktails are bullshit.
Well, yeah. What are you doing?
Like, why are you drinking a cocktail if it has like no alcohol in it?
Yeah, the idea here is to
go drink a Shirley Temple.
Yeah,
like seriously.
But so I fill the ice. I cover the ice with vodka. I usually will then add maybe 1/4 to a half shots worth like of Kahlua at that point. And then I will add milk, or half and half. Half and half usually is preferable. If you have whole milk, it's fine. I think it's not quite as rich, but in a way that's good in my opinion.
No, I agree. Actually,
but
I kind of prefer milk myself.
Yeah, so like, and then what I'm looking for usually, as far as volume goes, total volume is going to be somewhere between half and maybe 3/4 of that glass. It's not going to be a full glass. And I kind of eyeball it from there. I eyeball specifically the kind of brown-like consistency, the brownness of the milk, because I want it to be like slightly brown, but not like dark brown from the Kahlua. Because again, I don't like it super sweet. So I kind of have to sometimes
kind of the
mix
color
a
of one of
little
those fucking coffee things you get from Starbucks in the fall that isn't really coffee, but you know,
it's like a candy bar.
Those like 500 calorie like coffee drinks,
which I abhor.
Yeah, no, they're absolutely terrible.
But again, I don't have a sweet tooth. Like, I remember when I was first getting into coffee, small tangent, I would drink that sort of shit all the time because I mean, look, it's a candy bar.
And then
it's delicious.
Then you decided to be an adult about, your coffee consumption. And
I wanted it mainlined if possible. So, and I didn't want the sugar. That's the thing. I didn't want the sugar because I would crash.
I'm over here doing like heroin.
Yeah,
like
just
motions
like
over here. I don't want to like slap my arm into the microphone, but
But like, and that's the thing. Kind of a similar concept here. I'm not going for super sweet. I'm going for a balance. I want a little bit of that coffee flavor in there, but I want mostly milk. Honestly, is the flavor profile. And it takes a little bit of balance, but that's roughly consistency. And I don't fill the whole glass. It's about half to 3/4 fill on the glass.
Sure.
Making for kind of like a cocktail size thing. And I know yours is a little bit different on your prep method.
Yeah. So whereas you have kind of like a tendency to eyeball it a little bit more than I do, I am like about half a step removed from obsessive compulsive disorders when it comes to a lot of things. And, my mixology is one of those.
Sure.
So I actually have a very specific method, which ironically I did not use tonight because I'm usually mixing these at home. I'm not at home. So I typically am like really, really specific with my measurements of liquors whenever I'm mixing one of these. I will almost always be using a jigger whenever I'm making a cocktail.
Sure.
I work in the liquor industry. I have been in the liquor industry for, like almost a decade now. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things that like habit sort of just started informing, my day-to-day, mixology. And, so I will always do, 2 ounces of vodka versus 1 ounce of coffee liqueur. Again, I have a sweet tooth. So like 2 to 1 is my preferred.
Yeah, and that'd be heavy for me, and that's the thing. That's I think the biggest difference between us.
Absolutely, and actually, the first time I ever made a White Russian, I actually used coconut chocolate vodka. Which was produced by Stoli at the time, and I got it at Trader Joe's when it was on like a ridiculous sale for like $7 a bottle, and it literally made the best White Russian I've ever made in my life, and I've never been able to find that fucking vodka ever again.
It's like a coconut cream sort of thing. I can see that.
Yeah, no, but it was the chocolate that really made it best. But yeah, so if you manage to get your hands on a bottle of Stoli chocolate coconut vodka, make a White Russian with it. It will be the best cocktail that you have ever made in your life.
Interesting.
So, that being said, I will always do 2 ounces of vodka versus 1 ounce of Kahlua. And I will usually fill my glass with ice. Like I will pile the ice up all the way to the top of the glass. And then, having put the 3 ounces of liquor into the glass, I will then stir in my milk or my half and half, whichever I happen to have on hand at the time, usually milk, to the top of the glass. And that's kind of how I tend to roll, as I fill it all the way up. I'm a person who often takes consumption of things to extremes. You wouldn't believe it looking at me, but I eat and drink a lot.
You might believe it looking at me a little bit more, but yeah.
I mean, not even that. No, I have had people look at me after a meal and go, "How?"
Right. More just curiosity than anything.
Yeah. No. Apparently, I just I take in a fuck ton of calories. Ooh, whoops. Sorry, just slapped the table. It's okay. We'll edit that out.
Yes, we'll fix it in post.
So, that's really basically my thing, and I've got like the bar spoon that I'm stirring and making sure everything's like completely homogenized and all that stuff, which is why it's so ironic that like I did such a piss poor job right before we recorded this episode.
So it was like separated before we started talking.
I'm solidly just drinking like watered down Kahlua at this point, and it's not great.
Yeah. Should have just gone with the finger mix method. I mean,
no, I totally did, but the thing is, because I fill it all the way to the top, I can't like aggressively stir it.
See, that's the benefit of a not full glass, is you can actually get in there. I actually have a tendency to kind of what you're doing now, basically like swish around, like physically like swirl the cup.
Yeah, I've actually seen you do that. Like I've noticed you do that before.
Yeah, I do it. I do it with like most drinks that I drink. I do it with coffee. I do it absentmindedly with beer sometimes, just like as a compulsion, weirdly.
Yeah.
Because we all have our compulsions. Look, I'm a librarian. Like, if you're talking about OCD tendencies, let's talk.
Yeah, the two of us are both pretty OCD.
But yeah. So again, we'll put some photos up of kind of like our methods of preparation for White Russians.
I just hit myself in the eye with a piece of ice.
Our failures and triumphs, as it were, maybe.
I think that's a perfect jumping off point to our next segment.
Yeah, I think that's as good as any.
I just
really.
injured myself with a White Russian. I think we should move on.
Well, we can talk. I guess we should probably just transition then into the other alcoholic beverage then of the film, that being beer. Here we go. Yes. There's a couple scenes in the movie where the dude orders some beers, or oat sodas as he refers to them, which is just the fucking best. I mean, we could wax poetic about beer for a long ass time.
I especially could.
Yeah, I mean, like, I like beer a lot. It's my primary drink. That's the thing. Like, if given the option to drink pretty much anything, like at a party or at a bar, like, unless it's like a really nice cocktail bar or something, I'm usually going for the beer.
Well, I mean, beer is so insanely accessible anymore, and so beer. I work for a beer company now, and what I always tell people is, tell me what your tastes are, and I can find a beer for you.
Yeah. It's that good nowadays.
Yeah, there are so many options available. Beer is the ultimate equalizer with a drink. You can find sweet beers. You can find sour beers. You can find bitter beers. You can have, light beers and strong beers and heavy beers, and just you can run the gamut of flavors from fruity to earthy to candy to chocolate to toast.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's such a diversity out there, and I mean, we are also, I think, incredibly lucky, just as people who live in Southern California. I mean, the kind of microbrew craze and the craft beer craze, I feel like in so many ways was sort of epicentered here, San Diego in particular, but here in LA as well.
By the way, I'm just gonna fucking do it. I don't care if we're not getting paid for it. We're currently drinking Firestone Walker's Luponic Distortion number 9.
That's so good,
and it's fucking great.
It's like water, man. It's
My
so
company
good.
Doesn't even distribute this beer, but let me tell you, I love this beer.
It's real good, man. Well, Firestone is definitely a favorite of mine. I went to school in Santa Barbara. They're located up in Buellton, which is just right up the road. It was like the local beer for my college days, and like if I had the money for Firestone, I would drink it. And again, we're not being paid by Firestone to say any of this. Like, I just fucking love their beer.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to give them a shout out because I fucking feel like it.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to sponsor, they're not going to sponsor us. But if they wanted to sponsor us,
I don't know.
I would gladly take their money to
I
continue
will
to talk about
gladly. Hey, Firestone, if you want to give us some money to talk about your beer, you just, give me a call, drop me a line, because I will happily do so.
They do excellent work. But yeah, so like I think we're lucky in that regard, right? Like microbrews and craft beer here in SoCal is just insane. Like you can't throw a rock down the street and not hit a fucking like craft beer. Like it's fucking insane. Like
I'm sorry, I'm just imagining just ching 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 ching, like
yeah, just like right down the street. Like, it's nuts. Like, I picked up a 6-pack of this at, like, the corner store for the same cost that I would get it, like, at the supermarket. Like, no huge markup.
I very appropriately bought mine at Ralph's.
That is, in fact, the right way to do it. But, like, no, seriously, like, it's the same cost at your corner store as opposed to your grocery store. Like, it is fucking ubiquitous at this point.
Just to explain that, in case you're wondering, Ralph's also features in a few scenes in The Big Lebowski.
Yeah, I mean, it's where he's shopping for his half and half in the beginning.
It's where he's shopping for his half and half. It's where no spoilers, but it's where they go to buy a coffee can later in the movie.
Yeah. I'm not worried about spoilers, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 20-year-old movie. You're kind of late to the game if you're worried about spoilers.
Again, this is episode 5 on a, like Big Lebowski themed podcast. Go watch the fucking movie. But yeah, so craft beer is ubiquitous here, and I mean even before that, I just like beer. Like when I was in college, I was drinking shitty beer all the time because I had no money. And still, that was my preference.
Yeah, I never even I grew up in Oklahoma and I hated shitty beer growing up because it was just about all that anybody drank. Whenever I was around and growing up, I knew about like Keystone and Coors and Bud.
Yeah.
And then
the unholy trinity.
Yeah, I was about to say the horsemen of the apocalypse. And then, in the depths of my Irish fervor, I, had Guinness and was like, oh, this is what, good beer is supposed to taste like, which, now that I'm as in depth into the craft world as I am, I guess it's kind of heresy for me to say that, but I still enjoy the occasional Guinness.
I would take a Guinness. If you walked up to me and offered me a Guinness, I'd take the Guinness.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was literally at a concert on St. Patrick's Day a few years ago where the leading man at the concert started literally, why am I fucking, I was at a Flogging Molly concert.
Yeah, come on.
I'm wearing the shirt.
Yeah. We're not being paid by Flogging Molly. You can fucking say it. Who cares?
You know what, Dave King, if you want to be on the show, feel free to contact me. I'd be happy to have you.
It'll be great.
You're awesome. I've been to see this band literally 6 times.
Yeah. We'll hang out in the living room. It'll be fun.
Yeah, no, it'll be great. And Dave King was underhanding cans of Guinness out into the audience at the
As
time.
you'd expect. I mean,
which is exactly what you expect from an Irish punk band. It was great. I was like, man, I wouldn't mind getting beamed in the head with a can of Guinness on St. Patrick's Day.
Oh yeah.
By the lead singer of one of my favorite bands.
Yeah. I mean, look, who wouldn't?
Yeah, no, that sounds like that'd be a great fucking story. I mean, I'm still sporting bruises from the last one, so
that's wonderful.
Yeah. So let's get into beer, aside from just waxing on
how much we like it.
On how much we like it.
Sure.
I figured we'd talk a little bit about the history of beer. And
sure.
Beer has actually been kind of like a thing that's been linked with spirituality and religion pretty much from the get-go.
Yeah, interestingly.
So beer is actually, one of the oldest, if not the oldest, intentionally fermented beverages in the history of humankind.
Oh yeah, it's ancient, easily.
It goes back to probably our hunter-gatherer days.
Yeah, there's interesting, just a quick little side note on that, there's interesting studies on this. I'd heard something about this recently where people observing elephants, right, in Africa saw that they tended to go for fruit that had been on the ground for a while that was starting to rot and ferment naturally.
Yeah.
They preferred that. It's actually there's some kind of biological science that are indicating that humans or animals in general are drawn towards fermented
there's actually it's the amarula fruit. That's what it is. is.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. No, there's actually a South African liqueur called Amarula, which is made from that. It's a cream liqueur made from that fruit, and it's delicious. Nice. But yeah, no, it's based on the elephants that you're talking about.
There you go.
Yeah, so I mean, it's probably beer probably originated somewhere around the Fertile Crescent. Mm-hmm. There have been theories that, at some point in time, people were storing grain either in like a hole in the ground or in some sort of container that then leaked, and water water leaked into the container and caused the grain to start to germinate. And then once the starches within the grain had converted into sugars, then the naturally occurring yeast in the area fermented those sugars. People drank it, said, this shit tastes good, and it makes me feel all nice inside. And so they started doing that intentionally, obviously thousands of years before the advent of microbiology. So they had no idea why it was happening.
They just knew it was, and that it was awesome.
And that it was great.
So must have been from the gods.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Tie-in,
and in ancient Mesopotamia, there was literally a goddess, Ninkasi, which there's a wonderful craft brewery here in California named Ninkasi.
Perfect.
So Ninkasi was the goddess of beer and brewing. There is a tablet, an ancient Mesopotamic tablet, that I believe is kept in a museum in London somewhere.
Sounds about right.
Which literally translates as the prayer to Ninkasi, which is a recipe for making beer.
That's the kind of god I could be into.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a dirty pagan. I worship Bacchus and Ninkasi, and Jeffrey Lebowski. So,
perfect.
Whatever.
It's
In ancient Mesopotamia, the way of consuming beer was they would put a big pot of it around like a communal setting, and ancient Mesopotamians would drink the beer through long straws, which just invokes Andy Dwyer to me.
Totally.
From Parks and Recreation, where he
excellent.
invents the super straw. Which is one of my favorite episodes of the damn show. But yeah, these guys, they would have these really long straws, and it was actually a status symbol as to how long your straw was.
Of fucking course it was.
Look,
I've had beer through a straw, and the trick is, and here's the thing, the trick is you need a big straw. You need like a really big.
Otherwise, it just goes flat on the way to your mouth,
or it over fizzes,
or it over fizzes, and you just get a mouthful of foam.
But I know some people are gonna fucking hate me for saying it probably, but it's not the worst way to consume beer. Like, you just stick that in a big like fucking glass.
There are few ways I'm actually anti-beer consumption, so people can get pissed off if they want, but I'm not gonna object here.
Yeah, it's a big straw. Enjoy it. Dude,
yeah.
You do you. Like, fucking live your best life.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of consuming beer after there's been a dirty ping pong ball dropped into it, but
that's fair.
That's how some people choose to do it. So these straws were actually usually made of reed, as is to kind of be expected.
That makes sense. Yeah.
At the time period. And I mean, it's all in a big communal vat. Most of the carbonation is gone. It's more of like a porridge kind of situation,
I would imagine,
than as beer like as we kind of know it. But it was, it was consumed widely because, I mean, it was better than drinking the fucking water.
Yeah, safer than drinking the fucking water.
Safer than drinking the fucking water. And I mean, there are lots of nutritional value in beer. You get lots of carbs and, proteins and things in beer that actually at the time were quite necessary for survival.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, another quick side plug. If you want the history of fucking water, like just dirty fucking water, because it's been a trend recently, right? Like drinking like dirty water, essentially.
Oh, gross.
Which is the dumbest fucking thing. Another shameless plug for someone who does not support us. Go listen to Sawbones.
Yeah. That was a good episode.
It was really cool. And like like, we are not medical experts by any stretch. Go listen to a medical expert tell you why not to drink fucking dirty water.
Yeah.
Like, and then consider that beer a second time.
I mean, I'm a former backpacker, and I would very much like to get into backpacking again, but like, I knew, like, don't drink fucking dirty water.
Yeah.
It's Giardia Central, so unless you really want to literally shit your brains out, like, don't drink dirty water.
Yeah, come on. Think a little bit, people.
Yeah,
Like,
let's think about that. Microbiology has been a thing for almost 200 years.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck?
What is wrong?
Yeah.
What is wrong with this? One of these things does not belong.
Yeah, don't drink dirty water. But that's the thing, like, beer gave you, like, fermentation, unbeknownst to them, sterilized the water. And so it was safe to drink.
Yeah, absolutely. It was safe. It was nutritious. I was going to say that most of the straws were made out of reeds. Of course, the nobility and the royalty had straws that were made out of precious metals.
Of course they did.
That have actually been discovered in archaeological sites, like solid gold straws that were used to drink the beer.
I would love to be on that dig, right? You dig up a fucking straw, and you're like, I wonder what this is used for. Oh, they drink beer with it. Fuck,
yeah.
The fuck. I mean, that's not the Schliemann, stories you hear about from, like, classic archaeology, like when it was first getting started. It wasn't finding a necklace; it's finding their beer straw.
Yeah, and I mean, there's artwork from the time period just depicting a bunch of people sitting around a fucking bucket with beer in it.
I love it, though. Look, we should bring this practice back, I think it's wonderful.
No, I think it's great. I mean, it's basically keg stands, more or
keg
less.
stands, but without being upside down.
Yeah, more or less.
With a straw,
It kind of, you could kind of have, like, something that's sort of similar to, like, a mix between a keg stand and a hookah bar, quite frankly.
The only issue would be backwash. You have to figure out a way to keep that out of there.
I think you would have to just use pressurized kegs.
Yeah.
So that it would just, like, kind of shoot it into your mouth rather than having an actual, like, straw that you're just, like, sucking on.
We'll take a couple 1,000-year-old idea and bring in modern technology. We'll fix this.
Hey, I'm going to have an excellent bar one day.
With your fucking, like, beer hookah.
Tell me you wouldn't go there.
Oh, I would be there all the time. Will you have comfy pillows to lounge upon?
Of course I will.
Well, then of course I'll be there. I mean, come on.
God, I don't even know how we got onto this at
Beer
this point.
Fucking Mesopotamia, dude.
Yeah.
What's up?
So, beer fermentation obviously has come down through the centuries and the millennia. Beer was used as a form of payment for laborers in ancient Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
Slaves in Egypt were given literally like gallons of beer at the end of the day because like that was their main nutritional intake.
Had the added bonus of kind of pacifying people.
Yeah, no, it's like if you're drinking 2 gallons of beer a day, which now granted this isn't like the 9% imperial stouts that you're buying these days, but it's usually probably somewhere around like 2.5 to 3.5% alcohol, which is your standard like Coors, I guess. So
you drink enough of it.
Yeah, you drink 2 gallons of it, and you're going to be pretty pacified for multiple reasons.
Yeah, mostly just full.
Yeah, you're probably going to be really full. And even like scrapings of the urns inside of the actual King Midas's tomb have yielded analyses that have shown us what ingredients were used in a lot of the beers that were intentionally made at the time. Turns out they actually used grape must. So like grape juice out of wine grapes to help flavor the beers, and honey.
Honey, again, if you check out Sawbones, it's a recurring theme, and it's fucking fascinating.
Oh yeah, no, honey's great. I love honey.
Yeah, I can totally see that being actually probably kind of good. Like,
Dogfish Head, the East Coast brewery. I forget what state they're in now. Delaware, maybe? Something like that.
Sure, close enough.
Delaware, New Hampshire, something. They actually make the closest like approximation to the King Midas tomb beer. It's called Midas Touch. It's actually very good. It's a little sweet,
I
but
need to try that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So skipping forward a little bit, I really wanted to get into Middle Ages medieval beer making. Because this is where this takes a turn for what I really like to talk about. Because in the Middle Ages, actually, most fermentation of beer was carried out by women. Female brewsters were...
Oh, yeah, wait, I know about this.
Yeah, no, and...
this is great.
Yeah, and they... So women, particularly single women, would carry out a lot of beer brewing in society at this time. And they were known to keep a lot of the recipes fairly, secret. And there were a couple of things that we'll get kind of back around to here in a second. But there were a couple of symbols that were associated with female brewsters. Specifically, they were associated with their tall, pointed hats that they would wear. Which signified them to people that they were brewsters. And they would have brooms that they would use to scrape the yeast product off of the top of the wort, which is the fermenting beer. So that kind of became a symbol for the female brewster, so that when people were going to buy beer, a lot of people in this time period didn't read. So the female brewsters would hang broomsticks above their doorways to signify that this is where you go to buy beer.
This might all sound vaguely familiar.
This might all sound vaguely familiar in a second, because at the time, beer was not flavored with hops. It was flavored with a mixture of spices and herbs and fruit and things like that, which varied a lot from region to region depending on what was available, called gruit. And gruit recipes were very closely guarded, and the Catholic Church looked at that and said, we see money making to be had here. So the Catholic Church actually appropriated a lot of the recipes for gruit, and you had to go to church approved distributors in order to buy gruit to flavor your beer.
What a racket.
Yeah, what a racket. Made them a lot of money.
Sure.
And so it was also at this time that, these female brewsters were holding a lot of these recipes that the church wanted. They were a lot of single women who lived by themselves, were often not only, because, beer making is chemistry, we're also familiar with a lot of medicinal remedies at the time. So that's where we get a lot of the mythology about witches from medieval times.
Fun little plug, actually. Another quick little plug that I would recommend you to, because I fucking love this channel. It's a YouTube channel who did a quick little history on this too. It's a YouTuber called Dodger. Her YouTube channel is Dex Bonus. And she is wonderful. She is one of my favorite YouTubers out there. She doesn't do much on YouTube anymore, but she did have an episode of a show that she called Welcome to the Fandom on witches, and went through this history and had some cool kind of graphic overlays and stuff. Highly recommend it. Again, not a sponsor of the show, although Dodger, if you're listening, by all means, we'd love to have you and Sam on the show.
We don't have any sponsors yet. So
we have no sponsors. Nobody's giving us money.
I was about to say,
this is just us, baby.
This is pro bono, baby. At this point, if we plug something, you might as well just assume they're not paying us. Yeah. We just like it.
Yeah, but big shout out to Dodger. She did a really cool episode on this.
Big old shout out to Dodger. Great content there.
Anyway.
So, Catholic Church starts appropriating a lot of these gruit recipes, and if you didn't give it to them, you were basically threatened with excommunication or worse, because Catholic Church at the time, this wasn't, we're not quite to Inquisition territory yet, but
we're inching our way there.
We are inching our way there with the monotonous regularity of the conqueror worm. So Whew, boy, that got dark for a second. Then of course these gruit recipes were then passed to the monasteries, where they became a very important part of monastic life, particularly in Northern Europe, where Catholic monks couldn't grow grapes to make wine, so they were making beer. Which would then be sold to local populations. And this is what, has really brought us down to a lot of modern beer recipes when you're thinking about Belgian-style beers or abbey beers.
Trappist traditions and stuff.
Exactly. There are a number of monastic orders who are kind of closely associated with brewing, but the Trappists are definitely the closest. And so that's kind of how we ended up with a lot of these Belgian Trappist ales that we're kind of familiar with today.
Yeah, that are, some of them have been in production for hundreds of years.
Hundreds, if not almost 1,000 years or more. Yeah. And, some really excellent beers. They just, stole them off of a bunch of female brewers.
Yeah. Sort of the dicey history of the Catholic Church, which is otherwise known as the history of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, true. True.
Yeah, it's just how it is.
But yeah, it's not a whole lot I can do about it at this day and age. But
it's just what it is. But yeah. So it's a fascinating history about this sort of like kind of beverage that we all enjoy.
We all love. So everybody, go enjoy yourself a good oat soda.
Yeah, find something local. I think nowadays that's like kind of
it's pretty easy.
It's the way to go.
I can find something local in Stillwater, Oklahoma. You can find something local wherever you are.
Yeah, I can find something local in Apple Valley, California. Like, do you know where Apple Valley is? No, of course you fucking don't. Like, go get some beer in your hometown. There's somebody making beer.
One of our listeners just went, I know where Apple Valley... Oh.
It might be one of my friends. And they know which brewery I'm talking about. Go support your local brewery because they're fucking awesome.
No, absolutely. Go buy some local beer and have yourself a good old time.
Yeah, go enjoy. But I think that's probably as good a place as any to segue then into our final beverage, that being sarsaparilla.
Woo!
Which is a fun drink.
I do love me a good sarsaparilla.
And who doesn't? I grew up drinking root beer. Of course. If you're in North America, you've had some variant of this almost indefinitely, or it's almost definitely sometime in your life. I know it's not as popular in other parts of the world, but
there are some I know that you can find it in England and Australia, and then there are some Asian countries, I think it's Taiwan.
I heard about this actually. I read about it in my research. It was kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, which apparently the ones in Australia, Taiwan, that Southern Asian Australian area taste quite different from North American sarsaparilla.
That's interesting.
Which I did not realize.
And I didn't quite dig out how it got there. I imagine through Americans going there essentially, but
actually it's a little bit different. Turns out because sarsaparilla is a soft drink. It was originally flavored with a plant called Smilex ornata.
Yeah, it's the Latin for this.
The sarsaparilla root.
Yeah, it's a perennial. It's a perennial vine that's native to Mexico and Central America. So.
Yeah. The thing is, North American sarsaparilla was originally flavored with birch oil and sassafras.
Oh, okay.
As opposed to the actual Smilex ornata or ornata.
Yeah, which has a cool background in and of itself.
Yeah, I was about to say, go for it. I feel like I've been talking long enough. I'll just drink some beer and listen to you for a little while.
Well, what I thought super interesting, I made a note of this here in my notes, was that the kind of root for sarsaparilla is of course kind of a bastardization of the Spanish word for this vine that grew in Spanish regions, essentially.
Makes sense.
I'm going to butcher it, I'm sure, in its pronunciation, but if I'm correct in this, or if I'm close, it might be something like sarsaparilla. And
sarsaparilla?
Yeah, I think like sarsaparilla, somewhere in that area. With the double L, it goes to a Y, I'm pretty sure. But it's a two-part word. It's kind of a conjoined word there, sort of thing. It's zarza, which is a word for bramble, and then parilla, which means little grapevine. which is kind of interesting. And in appearance, it's kind of what it looks like, essentially.
God, phonetics are fascinating.
It is super. I love these breakdowns.
Or rather not.
Well, kind of etymology.
Etymology. Sorry, wrong word. I'm 2 drinks into this thing. I'm gonna use the wrong word. Sorry, guys.
But so, I mean, really what I have is that, so this was a drink that really gained popularity during the 19th century, especially kind of westward expansion.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, really fits to the theme of the movie, right? You have this sort of like stranger who's sort of like a cowboy type, and he's really like, he's jonesing for a good sarsaparilla. But originally, kind of like with a lot of soft drinks in the Americas, it started off as a like medicinal sort of thing.
Yeah, like a patent medicine kind of situation.
Yeah, kind of a cure-all. It was specifically sold as a cure for skin and blood issues.
Again, referencing Sawbones, cure-alls that cure nothing.
Yeah, basically. I mean, look, never underestimate the power of placebo, but really doesn't have any medicinal use.
No.
But it really quickly became associated with the West and with cowboys and with that sort of image. Essentially. And what's interesting, really interesting thing I found is, so if you watch the movie, the specific kind of sarsaparilla that's mentioned is Sioux City sarsaparilla,
which you can find like all over the place.
It's pretty common.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most common ones on the market.
At least, again, in the U.S. There's other brands in other countries. You mentioned kind of Southeast Asia. It's also still a drink in the UK. My understanding is that it got to the UK by way of the temperance movement.
Yes. Again, kind of getting back to the sort of religious connotations
Yeah.
of these beverages. Like, all of them have some sort of like connection with the spirit, which is why I'm like so excited about this episode.
It's kind of fascinating, and it's sort of like history. But so Sioux City sarsaparilla, interestingly enough, it doesn't go back that far. It dates back to 1987. Was the first year it was made.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's fairly recent. The bottling company is the White Rock Beverages Company.
Okay.
Out of New York, I believe.
That's so fascinating, because I mean, I've known, like, I grew up in Oklahoma. I had family that lived in Missouri, so whenever I would go to Missouri, we would go to Branson, we would go to Silver Dollar City.
Okay.
It's this Western themed, like, theme park sort of situation, and you can get like root beers and sarsaparilla and cream sodas and things. And Sioux City was a brand that I remember from my childhood, which I was born in 1988.
So it was like brand new.
So it was brand new, and I had no idea.
Yeah, it's weird because like we did similar things. Like there was a little like ghost town, like a mining town outside of Apple Valley called Calico. It's kind of fun, you go watch like a fake gunfight and whatever. But yeah, same sort of thing. You could get like sarsaparilla and like root beer and all these sort of things.
Yeah, no, it's like that was like a part of my childhood.
And I mean, maybe that is just speaking to the effectiveness of their advertising.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like they still have like the picture on the front of Sioux City sarsaparilla is a cowboy like walking through a pair of saloon doors. Yeah. They also, I mean, they make a number of other sodas, including root beer and birch beer, which is like very much an East Coast sort of situation, but is kind of derived in that similar aspect of like root beer and sarsaparilla.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that maybe also just speaks to how, I mean, it kind of in the American myth that we have of America, right? This sort of idea of like the cowboy and all these, and the West, and how something as, even maybe like advertised that way will bring people's imagination to that point, It's weird how that goes. And I mean, as with so much of like history and especially like kind of American myth, like how much of it is maybe fabricated or not entirely true. Like you start digging into the facts and it kind of demystifies a lot of it.
Welcome
quickly.
to America.
Yeah. I mean, hey, if you want more of that, I mean, I highly recommend, again, going and listening to Your Fave is Problematic, because, I mean, that'll just get torn apart for you pretty quick in very enjoyable fashion, I find. But yeah. 1987. Like, there you go. They started production the year after I was born.
Yeah, so, I had no idea.
So, I mean, it does have a historical backing back to neighbors apparently are getting home.
Wow. That was a double door slam right there.
But it does have its back. It does trace its roots back to like the West, essentially. So.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I was interested because, like I was saying, that American sarsaparilla, like as we know it, flavored with birch oil and sassafras, which is derived from like a ground up root. And so if you take the root, sassafras was actually medicinal substance in the 1800s, because if you take a lot of it, it will induce sweating.
Huh.
And so sarsaparilla sodas, which were flavored with sassafras, were sold as like basically an easy way to take this root,
this sort of unpleasant root,
this very unpleasant root that would make you start sweating, which a lot of medical, I'm going to use air quotes here, professionals at the time would say was good for you to like sweat out whatever was wrong with you.
Sure.
Because nothing cures you faster than dehydration.
The science definitely holds up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. However, like to this day, still fucking love a good sarsaparilla if I can get my hands on it.
And I mean, and nowadays too, it should be noted that I think the vast majority of these things are artificially flavored.
Most of them.
I mean, you can find stuff with like real sarsaparilla or real.
I mean, the craft soda movement is a thing.
That's also a thing, yeah. Much like the craft beer movement, craft soda's definitely a thing. So, but I mean, if you just go down to your supermarket and buy like root beer, I mean, it's just it was made in a lab, basically.
Yeah, God had nothing to do with those ingredients.
That was man.
God and nature had nothing to do with those.
No. But yeah, so I mean, kind of an interesting, quick little like look at the background of sarsaparilla, at least as far as I was able to find it.
Yeah, no, and I find it fascinating that, like I said, that we were able to relate all three of these back to some sort of like, spiritual movement.
Yeah, between temperance and everything else. Yeah, kind of fascinating.
Between temperance, the Catholic Church, and Dudism, we somehow managed to make this an actually prescient conversation.
We've come full circle, I suppose. Hello everyone, this is Alex here with a little bit of housekeeping for this episode. Thank you all so much for joining us for the 5th episode of The Purpose-Driven Dude, our episode on Dudic Mixology. I want to get our housekeeping out of the way here. This was a bit of a long episode, so I will try to be quick. First off, I'd like to just credit our music that we use. It is by Apache Tomcat. The name of the song is 2 p.m. Wake Up Call, and it is off the album Classics by Request. Fun surf rock there. Give them a look if you are interested in such things. And also, I'd like to just talk briefly about how you can get in touch with us and follow us on the interwebs, aside from subscribing to this podcast. You can reach us at Gmail. We have we have an address. It's pddcast@gmail.com. We are on Twitter. That is at pddcast. And we are on Facebook at facebook.com/pddcast. Pretty chill on social media, but definitely check out our Facebook page on this episode to see some photos on how Brad and I prepare our White Russians. And of course, would like to here also mention that we are part of Unit 24 Productions. We are a podcast network between Brad and I and a few of our friends. So if you're into what we're doing here and would like to listen to more of our podcasts, you can listen to podcasts such as Your Fave is Problematic, Good Libations, and Get Off My Lawn. I would recommend all of them. They're very, very fun. If you'd like to know more about alcohol in particular and beer and wine and all that good stuff, give a listen to Good Libations. It's a podcast that Brad and his girlfriend Liz do, and it's super fun, very educational, and it's about alcohol, so can't really go wrong. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get going here and get us back to the episode. Again, thank you so much for listening. Tell your friends if you're into the show, if you know someone who you think would be into this sort of thing, alcohol and dudism and all that good stuff. Back to the episode, and we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode. That puts us at June 25th. So listen in around that time for another episode, and we'll talk to you then.
Well, I know that you had some Dudist readings that you were interested in sharing with us.
Well, not for this segment, actually.
Not for this segment. Okay.
But that, I guess, offers as good of a transition as any to transition that into our third segment.
No, absolutely. We're running like a lot longer than I anticipated us running in this episode.
So we'll move right along then to getting to the dude of the matter. This week, I'm going to go on the site where I found, as I usually do, was digging through BBC and NPR as per usual. And the biggest story currently in the news cycle, I think, well, maybe not the biggest news story, but one of the biggest ones in the news cycle right now, and I think a good thing to talk about, would be the teacher strike in Oklahoma.
Yeah!
Not only in Oklahoma, actually, as it turns out, they are, where are they now?
West Virginia.
West Virginia was last month, and they were successful.
Yep.
So now Oklahoma teachers and Kentucky are striking. Kentucky, actually, I think, saw slightly larger protests over the last 24 hours. So.
You're speaking to like my sensibilities directly. Both of my parents were Oklahoma public school teachers and administrators. My sister is a public school nurse.
Wow.
So, yeah, you're going to be talking directly to, like, my sensibilities right here.
Well, this spoke to me also as a librarian.
I might get a little salty during this segment.
As well you should. I mean, and so if you're not familiar with this, teachers in these states, in West Virginia, Oklahoma, and Kentucky in particular, have been walking out.
Paid in peanuts.
Yeah, literally paid. Like, they haven't seen a wage increase in 10 years at this point, which, in my opinion, is criminal. They're staging walkouts, and they're going to the state capitals of their respective states and demanding higher wages. And there have been negotiations going on now for the last month and a half, 2 months in these states. We mentioned in West Virginia these strikes were successful in meeting teachers, I think, fairly reasonable demands. And that's putting it mildly.
What? A living wage?
Yeah, who'd have thought? That'd be good. And it's not only about a living wage. I mean, as anybody who's ever known a teacher or been a teacher or anything knows, is that, I mean, you are putting in way more hours than you're actually paid for on a daily basis.
Absolutely. No, I actually, growing up, little story time with Uncle Brad here. I would go with my mother and father to the almost completely empty elementary school in Marlow, Oklahoma, and my dad would actually have me break down boxes of textbooks and put them on a dolly and take them to the various classes or the classrooms.
You were a hired hand.
Yeah, I was a hired hand. He would. My father was a very fair man and would give me some sort of compensation for my efforts there. But yeah, no, literally like that just like it really, looking back on it, I'm like, the fact that it was necessary for the principal and a third grade teacher to have their child help distribute textbooks in a school is sad.
It is. And I mean, and where things are at now is so much worse, really, because I highly recommend, and we'll put a link in the show notes for this to the BBC.
Yeah, this was almost 20 years ago, by the way.
And I mean, like, there was a BBC video that they put together. They interviewed 3 different teachers in Oklahoma and just kind of talked to them about what their situation was like. And I mean, one of the women said she literally had about 20 textbooks for about 80 students. Like there is no money for supplies.
The funding for supplies is actually criminal.
Yeah. Like they're using textbooks that are 30 years old, like the same textbooks that you were probably helping to distribute. nearly 30 years ago.
May still be in circulation today.
Which
and
is
a lot
absurd.
of companies in the U.S. that are printing textbooks have not printed updated textbooks for a decade.
Yeah, which in and of itself, that's a whole different issue.
Yeah.
To be sure. Like, the textbook industry, I mean, I can go on. Again, I'm a librarian. I can go on about fucking textbooks and the racket that is. But all this to say, like, I highly recommend watching this video. I mean, one of the women who they interviewed works full-time as an elementary school teacher, and then every night goes straight from that job in the afternoon to work as a rescue animal tech until like 2 a.m, and that's just to keep a roof over her and her daughter's head. They are crushing stories. Every single person that was interviewed was like on the verge of tears, just over this is their daily situation. And what I thought was most telling really was one of the interviewees, because two of the women were a bit older. They were probably middle-aged women. One of them was like roughly our age. She was like 29, 30, something like that. And she said something which really rang true to me. And I think it's something anybody roughly our age has heard, is she said, I'll go and see family, over the holidays, and they'll say, well, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? When are you going to start your life? That phrase, when are you going to start your life? And she's like, has offers from like family trying to get her work in like wherever they live, where she can be making a salary double what she's making as a teacher in Oklahoma.
These are the people who are forming the future of this world.
Yeah, literally. And they're being left in the dust. And it's unexcusable.
It is absolutely inexcusable. And it actually, like, it's hard for me to keep a dudist mindset about this, because I get extremely angry.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you probably can hear it I mean, like, we're people who are tied to education in various ways. And I thought it was interesting from a dudist perspective, trying to bring it back to kind of the dudist perspective on this, because I think there's a misconception that a lot of people have of Taoism that it is, like, anti-intellectual in some way.
Yeah.
That it kind of shuns academic learning and, like, education in its sort of, like, modern sense. And I think that's a misconception of what Taoism goes for, at least as far as I understand it. Because I think really counter to that, Taoism really generated these schools of thought in Chinese society throughout the millennia of like this sort of like naturalistic approach to learning. It's observation based. It's a lot of scientific method basically. You see it in Taoism.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have that dichotomy of like Taoism versus Confucianism in ancient China, where you have Taoism, which is much more naturally flowing, as opposed to Confucianism, which exists within a very like hierarchical set of rules,
like a more rigid system. And it was the yin-yang of kind of Chinese philosophy, right? Like, you had both of these kind of competing schools of thought. But, I mean, education in its modern form, I mean, it's a little bit of all of those things. Any schoolroom you walk into, and you see it in these articles, too. I mean, one of the women was talking about she was up until, like, 2 a.m. making these, like, little diorama boxes for her students. That's thinking, like, literally outside. I mean, that has nothing to do with, like, the textbook, Like, these are teachers who
creating their own, materials for class
out of their own pocket, And like, that's the thing. Like, these are people who are some of the most humble people, some of the most altruistic people you'll ever meet, and they truly believe in what they do, and you can tell. I mean, you just talk to them for 5 minutes, you can tell.
Yeah.
And it's, again...
It's a level of passion you rarely find in other career paths.
Yeah, I mean, people call it they say it's a calling, and it has to be. If you're going to be a successful teacher, and if you're going to be an effective teacher, you have to be called to do that. Like, and so...
It has to be an intrinsic part of your very being.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, every teacher that I know that is, again, like a successful, someone who enjoys what they do and through all the bullshit, because there's a lot of bullshit here in California too, and I don't want to, put too fine of a point on it, but like, yeah, like there's problems that are systemic to education in the U.S., and these are sort of the flashpoints that are going on right now, and so I bookmarked chapter 19 of the Dudic Ching and the Tao Te Ching because that's the chapter that speaks kind of directly, I think, to this misconception that people get of Taoism, where it says to kind of like eschew academic learning. But I think, and my interpretation of it and what I've read through a number of kind of analyses of the Tao Te Ching is that really what it gets down to is not so much discounting learning and academic endeavors on the surface, but to find useful ways of using your knowledge. You don't want to just hoard knowledge for knowledge's sake. You don't want to just learn for learning's sake. Have a purpose to what you learn.
And you're avoiding pedantry,
Exactly.
basically. Like it's you're pursuing knowledge for the sake of furthering yourself and furthering the states of those around you, rather than just learning things because you want to be the smartest or the most educated in the room.
Exactly. And I can think of really nobody else that exemplifies that better than like K through 12 teachers. I mean, that is them.
Absolutely.
They have gone through so much training, so much school just to pass that knowledge along to future generations. And so I figured this was the story to cover this week, and really wish all of them the best of luck, in their endeavors. I hope that they're up against some pretty tough barriers here. I mean, these are pretty conservative states by and large, Republican legislatures that don't want to raise taxes basically to support these people. So.
I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm from Oklahoma. Mary Fallon is an evil human being, and she needs to be gotten out of office as quickly as possible, because as long as she is in office, she will never be a friend to the education system of Oklahoma. And I'm kind of going a little bit off script here. Like I firmly believe that she is poison to the next generation of young people in Oklahoma, and she will do everything in her power to keep them down.
And it's criminal. And I think one of the things I heard in looking at these articles, there's people out at the state capitol holding signs that say the comeuppance is going to be in November, and I think that's the truth.
I really hope it is.
I think that's what we can hope for coming into the midterm elections here. And we'll see how it goes. But more power to them. I hope that they're successful in their protests and in their walkouts. And,
you have the teachers of Oklahoma and Kentucky and West Virginia and everywhere else that you are dealing with these horrible situations. For what it's worth, you have the support of the dudes.
Yep, you got the dudes on your side, man. For what it's worth.
This aggression will not stand, man.
Yeah, this aggression. So, but that's what I had. And, got a little serious, but, it's important to talk about. And I think that's the idea. That's what I want to get to with this particular segment, right? Talk about something in the news, talk about something current.
Absolutely.
And kind of find that shed a light in there, hopefully, So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully, West Virginia will continue to stand as the example, and these states will follow suit. That'd be great. So.
Yeah. Just 47 more to go.
Well, you got to start somewhere. So. Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you so much again for joining us this week. Obviously, like I said, we're going to have our social media ways to contact us in the show notes. If there's anything that you would like to hear us talk about on The Purpose Driven Dude, feel free to drop us a line. Yep. We're going to have a Gmail account. We are going to have a Twitter. We are going to have a Facebook page.
We'll be getting that sorted. Again, when we go to edit these, I'll probably be doing a little bit of housekeeping.
And figuring all that good stuff out. If there's anything that you want to hear us talk about, by all means, drop us a line. If you have any comments or observations that you'd like us to address, just let us know. Yep. And until then,
fuck it, dude.
Let's go bowling.
Fuck yeah.